All right, let's get tactical here. So 12 business units, 12 different customer journeys, 12 different content strategies and product lines. How do you even begin to approach AEO at that scale?
Yeah, it was definitely kind of a how do you eat an elephant kind of thing, one bite at a time. Um, it's a little bit intimidating, going into a new channel like that. We were fortunate in that we have a lot of historical foundation in SEO. Um, so essentially, we kind of evolved our strategy out of SEO. We looked at a lot of our target queries, a lot of like what our competitors are ranking for, what we're ranking for, and then try to expand that into how would this be, a conversation in an LLM type format. So we can actually look at things like related questions people also ask to sort of get to that type of tone. And then that's when we used Athena and coming up with like a lot of the variations there, because, you and I would ask, different prompts, different ways. So we sort of fanned out all of those sort of a little bit longer tailed question format, but major keyword target containing queries into a multitude of different prompts. So that's given us like a lot of variation, a lot of diversity in our prompt tracking. And, now we're in the phase of tracking things like share of voice, for really, tens of thousands of prompts that were based off of sort of a smaller set of keyword database.
Makes sense. And how do you think about centralizing your GEO, AEO strategy, or does each business unit operate independently? And what have you seen that you can share with everyone about what's been working, what's been some challenges?
Yeah. All the business units, they have their different needs and desires. Um, Totally different type of customers, totally different types of intents, totally different sets of competitors. Um, so those are a little bit siloed, but it's actually, there's a lot of overlap with the LLM strategy and our SEO strategy. So at the end of the day, we're essentially fighting for visibility, right? Um, and what I've been doing recently is trying to look at a way that I can sort of view things up from a universal perspective and essentially say like, okay, between, you know, Google search results, Google AIOs, these handful of LLMs, we have this level of overall organic visibility.
Makes sense. Really helpful for SEO directors, marketing managers out there watching. Um, SoFi has a very complex use case, and this is a lot of useful insights. Tell us more about when you think about and look at certain business units, are there certain ones that are more naturally AI search ready than others? And what makes that difference there?
Yes. I would say like a lot of the products that are a little bit more established have some advantage, because, with LLM marketing, there's a lot of overlap with SEO in that topical authority and sort of historicity is really taken into account. So, SoFi started off as a student loan refinancer, like type of brand, and we have so much history there, years and years of it, hundreds of pages about it, huge backlink profile driving to that product. We have dominated share of voice in that for, tracking against the different LLMs. We have some newer products that, we just haven't had the velocity and page production. We haven't established that historical backlink profile. And those are the ones where we see a lot of gaps. But using something like Athena, where you can kind of target in on what are the things that are driving visibility to competitors, that's allowed us to hyper focus on targeting certain backlinks or maybe affiliate relationships where we can gain a lot more direct visibility for those newer products that don't really have that strong backbone.
Makes sense. Looking at both on page and also off page. Um, Shifting gears a little bit, talking about the team, right? And how we're seeing AI search leaders structuring the team. What do you have to share for our viewers here about what your team structure looks like to support AI search optimization at this scale of complexity?
Yeah, that's been an interesting challenge. It's one of those things where all this stuff is so new, so we're kind of all figuring this out at once. Um, like I said, the products are very differentiated, uh, different business unit leads, different, challenges, different competitor sets. So within those different verticals, I've tried to really merge LLM and SEO. And the reason I do that is because we know that there's a lot of sort of dependencies there and a lot of insights you can gain from one channel to apply to the other. So I'll give you an example of an interesting data point I read. There's a lot of correlation, obviously, between ranking really well in SEO and showing up more in different LLMs. So there's a huge percentage of like LLM results that are ranking on page one of Google. An interesting little note I saw was that if you are ranking well for your topical relevant keywords in SEO, if you just add citations, like new citations and data points and statistics to that page, you almost double your chances of showing up for those kind of target prompts in the LLMs. So there's a lot of like relationships there and synergy that I want really just one person kind of having an overview there. So I really have one report per different business unit that oversees sort of the holistic organic approach, whether it be in LLMs or SEO.
So this is a question that everyone who's managing a large existing website or websites wants answered. So you've got thousands of pages of content built for traditional SEO. How do you turn that into AI ready content without starting from scratch?
Yeah, that's a challenge. Again, we kind of have some wind in our sails on that because we have a wide variety of content that we've been pumping out for years. I'm a big believer in not just chasing like search volume directly and actually looking at how can we build up a lot of topical authority within the financial space for whatever products we have. So, with that, I have a wide catalog of things that I can sort of test and experiment with. We've been, relying on a lot of what Athena can do with the like optimizer tool and seeing points where, okay, I think we have a right to play for this prop set. We have a lot of competitors ranking there. We know that it's a possibility for us to show up there as a brand mention or a citation. What are the commonalities that they have that we do not, and how can we apply that to our page without taking away from how we're performing in SEO? And luckily, when you're doing a lot of that kind of optimization work, it's not like you're necessarily thinking about, okay, I need to cut here and like nip this out. It's a lot of additions and just restructuring. And at the end of the day, like LLMs are trying to, similar to Google, better understand and index or better understand and digest information. So when you're doing a lot of optimizations for the LLMs, it's kind of in the same spirit as SEO. You're essentially trying to make something easier to read through, easier to parse, easier to organize, and easier to then generate out.
Makes sense. Very helpful. What's the biggest mistake you see, Jeff, companies are making or make when they're trying to retrofit existing content for AI search?
Yeah, similar vein here. I think just with like the mass influx of the conversation around LLM marketing, people are kind of putting that on a pedestal above SEO. So I know there's a lot of instances where maybe other companies are looking at how, okay, we have this page up, we want it to show up in LLMs. There's just, this page was originally formatted for human users and the Google index, and there's just too much going on, and we want to really strip it down. And that's fine and all to try to like make something to be more digestible to LLMs, but when you're to a lot of that sort of peripheral information that's on a page that gives it, that ability for Google to understand, okay, there's a lot of topical relevancy here. Once you start really slicing that up, for the sake of LLMs, I think that's the wrong approach, because you're really sacrificing like your SEO. When we're trying to take approach where we're creating additions and adding, just restructuring what we have.
Yeah, we're definitely definitely aligned on that. Sometimes we've seen folks maybe go too far out of left field and sacrifice the human readability purely for AI search and LLM readability, and that compromises content quality. How do you balance maintaining your traditional SEO performance while also optimizing for AI search? And do they ever conflict?
I'm sure we'll reach into situations where they may conflict, but I really view them as kind of working in sync. I would say there's a good way to when you take into account Google's AI overviews as well. I see opportunity in really three different buckets, right? So like traditional search, your rankings on page one, the AI overviews, and the LLMs. There's points where I think we can better prioritize based on the insights that we gain from having three different levers like that, where maybe we see a page that is ranking on page 2 for Google. We know there's a lot of correlation between rankings on page 1 and then showing up for those types of prompts, related prompts. So where traditionally maybe we would have just looked at, okay, there's a lot of search volume for this term, we want to move it on to page 1. We have thousands of those opportunities. We can now prioritize on something where, okay, we're ranking on page 2. We really want to show up in this LLM prompt group. So we're going to prioritize these sets of pages versus just trying to chase after search volume.
What made you decide that now is the right time to prioritize this? And what were you seeing in the market or in your own data that pushed up this priority list?
I think it was sort of the tail end of 2024, early months of 2025, where, you can look at like Google search interest and it just skyrocketed. We kind of had like a crisis as a society around leveraging like personal AI and different agents and LLMs. So, through that, you hear, okay, this is the future. This is, oh my God, it's replacing SEO. There's a lot of attention on it, even from people like outside of marketing saying, this is something, how are we playing in the space? What are we doing? It was really through me actually seeing that Google was recognizing this as a major cultural shift when they started, really excessively launching AIOs and then launching their own AI mode, where, my logic was, okay, Google is actually evolving themselves to sort of match this consumer change. That means like we absolutely have to, because this is officially an SEO deal now. So it was at that point where I really started researching a lot of vendors and trying to decide, like, how do I track this? What are my levers for optimization? Is this something that I can actually control? And once we really decided that, yeah, this is something you can influence, just like SEO, then it should sit under our house and just be a part of the overall organic strategy.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about AI search, I was at Google in late 2024, and one of the really exciting things about it, also scary things about it, is both a consumer behavior shift and a technology shift. And we're seeing a lot more consumers enjoy AI search, that style of search where you're kind of served the answer. At the same time, the tech behind it is different than traditional search. So looking forward, let's say 12 months from now, what does AI search at SoFi look like? And what are you and your team building towards?
We're trying to approach this from a kind of universal view, where I want people in the organization viewing overall organic visibility as something that encompasses of a multitude of buckets. And so like LLM visibility and SEO visibility are part of those buckets. And that's the path that we're on right now. We're trying to track, these multitude of prompts. We're trying to look at our share of voice against competitors and target opportunities to gain just a bigger footprint across the customer journey, whether that's in something like ChatGPT or traditional Google search results or Google AI. I think where we're going is a world where it's not necessarily me and my team driving a lot of those optimizations, but I'm working with other teams. So, there's a lot of prompts that they show branded returns. Those are being driven by things like affiliate lists, right? So like top, 10, whatever. In those cases, I have the ability now where I can see those opportunities. I can, through some of the like prompt search volume aspects, I can actually see the opportunity and kind of gauge that opportunity. And then I can go to another channel like affiliates and say, hey, this page is driving, this level of visibility for our direct competitor. All we need to do is try to get like on this list. And then we measure the ROI through like sort of a halo tracking component where we look at things like follow-up direct traffic, even parameter-based referral traffic, and essentially say like, okay, yeah, we paid for this placement on this affiliate list, but at the end of the day, it drove this much business and we got a good ROI.
Yeah, be very quantitative about the actions. Love that. And also expanding to other teams because we're seeing AI searches touching many parts of the marketing org. What advice would you give to someone listening who's managing a complex multi-product content ecosystem in the era of AI?
I would say don't try to boil the ocean all at once. We've been incrementally kind of creeping into the level of tracking that we have. We started out with just a few prompts together, and then we did a major expansion. And that was because we took a lot of learnings from those initial groups of prompts. The thing is, like, you could upload tens of thousands of different prompt variations. If you aren't doing those in small batches and bucketing those by intent and by, type of search, whether it's transactional or educational, or if they're looking for a certain sub-product, it's hard to hone in on where your opportunities are because you're just going to be looking at a huge list of prompt variations. So the way we're tracking in Athena is bucketed by, very small intents, different needs. Is a consumer looking to, get out of credit card debt? Are they looking to just start like paying off their credit card debt faster? Or they're trying to get rid of it all at once? Those are totally different consumers and totally different intents and prompts groups that we can then say, okay, for this type of intent, we have great visibility, but for this type, we are totally lacking in the share of voice against our competitors, and we need to focus more of our time there.
So, Jeff, how does Athena enable action for your team on AI search?
Yeah, it's a pretty kind of seamless pathway to take action, which I do appreciate. We can see things like for the different prompt groups that we track for those very particular types of intent and consumer, we can see places where we've had competitors show up more, maybe we're showing up less. And then just through the platform itself, look at either a page that we should have ranking there and directly see like, okay, how can we optimize this page to show up more for this prompt? Or we can see total gaps where we don't have an asset to then show up there. And Athena can help actually prep, design, structure that type of content or that type of landing page for us to then execute on our CMS.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for being on the Athena podcast. We appreciate your time.